Today on the Epic Vision podcast, I have here with me collage artist Sarah Hardacre. Sarah's work combines brutalist tower blocks with bold images of women lifted from vintage magazines that sparks conversations around politics, place, and identity. I'm so excited to jump into her work, jump into her journey, and see the vision behind her practice. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. That was an amazing introduction, Jojo. Thank you.
All right. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm all right. Yeah, I'm all right. Sun's shining. Really good to be in the studio.
Yeah.
Amazing to welcome you here as well. Yeah.
Thank you. You have a beautiful space over here. And yeah, I was just blown away. As soon as I walked in the room, I was just immersed into your world.
Yeah, I think lots of people when they come in, I've been here 12 years, and lots of people when they walk into the space sort of are like, wow, what an amazing space. And I guess I maybe don't see it in the same way because it's just it's very much an outward showing of my personality and identity, I guess.
It's normal to you then?
Often it just gets used as a bit of a dumping ground when you're kind of out doing work and workshops, that you kind of come down, pick things up, go away, throw things in.
Yeah.
And I'm just entering a new phase of being down here a lot more often. And we recently had an open studio event, which prompted me to have a bit of a tidy up and get some more work out on the walls. And
that's nice.
I feel like I'm back in control of the space again.
And how did that open event go?
It was a really good open studio event, and this year I made a little bit more effort to engage with the audiences coming through the door, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't often get my work out because I work with a gallery in London, Paul Stolper.
Okay.
So I don't sell my work independently.
Okay.
But this year made a little bit more effort to get some of my work out, be a little bit more present, and go into some really engaging conversations with people as well. Because I think, like you said in the introduction, my work is quite bold.
Yeah.
Almost in some ways brazen with the female figures that are within the work.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't quite know how to take that.
It's really interesting. I've seen your work and I'm really interested to know the type of conversations or the type of questions that you've got.
Yeah, well, it is. I'm sort of investigating. I mean, I think when I first started the journey with this work, I was living in a tower block in Salford. I used to live in Adelphi Court, which there's still a sign up there that I managed to acquire at some point in time. Adelphi Court was my home for probably 12 years. There's maybe something significant about that number in terms of sort of like shifts or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm due a move soon. But yeah, I loved Adelphi Court. Absolutely loved living in that tower block. The kind of my neighbours, the relationships I built over the time that I was there. Right. The lives of the people within that tower block, and also its sort of setting within Salford as well. I studied my visual art, which is now a fine art degree at Salford University, during the time that I was living there. That area of Salford is so close to the city centre of Manchester that I was just kind of, in the city centre all the time. And just kind of looking out, the kind of skyline views, being up on the 14th and 15th floor. I had a one-bed flat on the 15th floor facing Manchester, and then moved down to the 14th floor into a two-bed flat after a few years, which faced out over Salford. It was just kind of, your view was the skyline. So it ended up having a huge influence in my work.
Right.
Before living there, I grew up in West Yorkshire, in kind of some of the rural villages around Huddersfield. Complete contrast from kind of like, Yorkshire stone built houses, a
lot of greenery.
A lot of greenery, a lot more like here really. So maybe I've kind of done something where I've come back a bit full circle. And living in the tower block and investigating those kind of like brutalist tower blocks was really interesting.
When you think about the impact of your beginnings in Salford, let me say that, and your environment on your work, would you say Salford still lives in your work?
Absolutely.
Right.
100%. My heart is still in Salford. I guess you could say that. My heart is definitely still in Salford. I think the thing that I started investigating whilst living in Salford was after I'd finished my degree course, my degree, I was doing a lot of kind of researching in museums and archives, and I discovered the local history archive at Salford Museum and Art Gallery, which was one of the very first free public libraries. And their image archive there was incredible, just filing cabinet after filing cabinet of images that were just so immediately accessible. You could just, you'd have a little filing card, you could get a reference, go for a number, open the filing cabinets up, and there'd just be hundreds of photographs in there. It wasn't digitised, it wasn't online. You could just walk in and you could just go through. So the kind of ability or the sort of happenstance of being able to look for something, but then by looking for one thing, being able to come across something else that you weren't looking for, was a huge influence within my work. And just there's something about the photography of the kind of era of the 60s and 70s when a lot of these tower blocks were being built. Sort of film photography, the sort of feeling that's created within that photography. And it was sort of, in some ways, tracing back a lot of, across the road, a little bit further down the Crescent from the library and art gallery, was the former TGWU officers, which was old union officers. And my gran used to be a shop floor union worker. She used to tell me stories about going there for meetings. So it felt like I was kind of retracing family steps. I felt really connected into that environment. I became really interested in the sort of time when these tower blocks were being built. There was a huge area in Salford called Hankey Park, or rather Hankinson Park, which Walter Greenwood wrote about in his book Love on the Dole. And they were all kind of back-to-back terraced houses, and they'd not been invested in, and they were considered like slums because they didn't have internal running water. They were poor quality housing. So, post-Second World War, there was a countrywide endeavour to improve housing quality. The NHS was being launched, the welfare state was being introduced. So this real kind of utopian vision, I think, for what the country could become. And lots of these back-to-back houses and areas were cleared, which made way for new tower blocks. Very much adopting the kind of brutalist style of European socialism. Within those complexes, they were building shopping centres, pubs, doctors, schools, everything was there. But then how over kind of years, these places weren't then invested in. Once they'd kind of initially been built, they weren't invested in them. Very quickly in subsequent years, and towards the kind of 1980s, had become really neglected.
Derelicts, basically,
almost derelict. And if they weren't derelict, they were still inhabited, they'd become kind of synonymous with antisocial behaviour, drug use, transient tenants. And I think one of the themes that came out specifically from that was, for me, was how women were engaging with these environments. How it felt for women to inhabit these spaces, which technically to me represent a man-made world, because the majority of architects and city planners who were rolling out these sort of like architectural visions were men. And perhaps what looks on paper like it might really well work might not have been the same experience for a woman who had, a toddler and a 1-year-old in a pram and a week's worth of shopping and had to navigate stairs and walkways that were dark.
And like you said, all sorts of sketchy people hanging around there as well.
So. Absolutely. Lifts broken, things not working. And in some ways, I think you touched on it a little bit before, but about the images of the women being so bold, they're often... They loom large over the architecture, really.
When I look at your work, the women are basically giants in the work, but somehow they feel like they belong there. They don't look out of place. The woman is taller than the building, but she looks like she's supposed to be there.
I think in my mind, the women become giantesses in the work. They become like these matriarchal forces looking after these areas, kind of bringing some glamour into the grit of the neglect within these urban spaces.
Yeah.
But also a little bit like Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, referencing that kind of famous film that, you know, the woman gets so frustrated and angry that she becomes this sort of giant. She blows up and becomes this giant size that, the women in my works are kind of doing that in a way.
The women are mostly naked, sometimes half clothed, but they are not looking away. They are looking straight at the viewer. What do you intend to achieve by that? What do you hope the viewer sees when they look at your work like that? That's a really good question, because I'm not sure whether I think about what the viewer sees, but there's definitely something about, obviously, working with vintage gentlemen's magazines, shall I call them, of a similar era to when the tower blocks were being built, 60s, 70s. It's kind of removing the models and the women from the male gaze, as it were, removing them from the magazine page and putting them into a new environment where, they're looking directly at you. So immediately you might be questioning, like, oh, actually, what am I looking at here? And I suppose there's sort of questions around kind of notions of public and private space. Yes.
For me, domesticity being what would be given over to the woman's realm, which is the interior of the space, but then the man's world is the exterior, to be building it and planning the town and everything. In some ways as well, there's something for me about kind of more recent fetishization of architecture. And again, more recently, there's been like a fetishization of brutalism. It's become very cool and very... Like
a lot of vintage clothing and everything comes back around.
Yeah, it comes back around, and definitely modernist and brutalist architecture is having its sort of moment. At the same point in time, a lot of these places, especially within the kind of north of England, there's still people living within those structures who don't have the privilege to be able to look at those buildings in the same way. I think I remember going to see the Apollo Pavilion, Victor Passmore's Apollo Pavilion in Peterlee in the northeast of England, and you kind of get there to look at it. It's this amazing concrete structure. It's in the middle of a housing estate. And you kind of get there and you go to see this thing, and immediately you're just aware that, like, wow, I've stepped into this is someone else's world here. And it's great that we're turning up to honour this amazing piece of architecture. Yet the people who are living there are probably like, that eyesore, get rid of it. We don't want that. That means nothing to us. We'd rather have X, Y, and Z with, we'd rather have a kid's playground, or we'd rather have something else.
It doesn't hold the same meaning for them.
It doesn't hold the same meaning at all. So kind of, being aware of having that privilege when looking at a lot of the architecture. And definitely something in that kind of, maybe it's about extracting the women from the pages of the magazine where they're kind of passive, that then all of a sudden
that's a very, very interesting concept, because I've never thought of it like that, but it was, because all those magazines were called lads magazines, and so it wasn't for women, it was for men. And so it's such a powerful thing to take them out of that, put them in your work, which is an entirely different space where they are seen totally different. It's the same image, but it's viewed differently. Another thing that also hit me is, so you're taking these vintage magazines, and most of these women would be models, right? I remember you saying that it's different now, because if you look at models now, their bodies have been enhanced in several different ways, whereas these models from that era are more natural. Is that part of the reason why you chose that era?
Absolutely. Not only does it kind of match with the era that the tower blocks were being built, so there's some sort of synergy between the time frame of all the imagery that I use. The images in the magazines were taken before digital photography, before Photoshop. So it would be a model and a photographer who had a film camera with 24 or 36 exposures.
Yeah.
So there was none of this kind of, being able to take hundreds and hundreds of images and then select the best one and then digitally enhance it, which is what we get fed to us as women now in magazines, where, the slightest little bit of a blemish is removed. They're unrealistic images because they've been so touched up.
Yeah.
Also, the women, particularly at that time, even though they are all fairly slim women and still do have those kind of model attributes, there are little, nuances between all of their bodies, different sized boobs, different sized nipples, little paunches in the belly.
Yeah.
They are much more natural women. Rather than, I think, today we've got a lot more body modification, plastic surgery is accessible, injections, filler, and images, especially through social media that we get now, are quite homogenised, and there's almost like a lot of filters, a lot of people wanting to look almost the same way.
Yes.
There's kind of like within particular kind of strains of influencer, there's kind of a very homogenised sort of look that lots of women follow and aspire to. And I think as well there was something so naive in a way about some of the images. So they were also taken from before a time when genitalia were allowed to be published and shown in magazines. So while these women might be, kind of fully naked, you're not seeing genitalia, it's just the boobs. They're kind of in, which to me almost doesn't seem too far removed from some of the adverts that we get in popular media today, on billboards selling perfume, in pop stars performing on stage, who don't wear so many clothes anymore these days. So there's definitely something about that. They almost are quite naive images in a way for me.
I'm thinking about the effects these kind of things have had. The mass media showing all these touched up images of women and all that. It probably had an effect on the mental health of a lot of women when it comes to confidence. Like you said, a lot of these women are looking to look a certain way because that's what's been shown to them. And the models all look that way. Whereas if you go back a few eras, they all look different, and it's okay to look different. But now all of a sudden, if you don't fit this criteria, you can't be a model. You can't appear on TV. You can't, So has that had an effect on how maybe young girls see themselves even?
I have zero proof to back up what I'm about to say. However, anecdotally, through, recent news over sort of recent years, there have been lots of reports about pressures through social media, young people committing suicide, young people, being so heavily influenced by what they see. I think there's always that kind of thing that we always look outwardly, or we often look outwardly to others to see what kind of tribe we're following, or what kind of identity we want to have. I think young women do feel that sort of more. I'm like 48 now. Give less of a crap about what I look like than I ever have done in my life.
You don't look it, to be honest.
Thanks, Mum. But yeah, I think I do think there's a lot of pressure comes from the circulation of those images kind of online through influencers, and also through pornography that is now available online. Going back to looking at, if you look at a copy of Penthouse magazine now from the 1960s, it's so tame. Only kind of 3 or 4 pages of a 100-page magazine were actually images of women not wearing clothes. The rest of it was kind of like Sir Kingsley Amis used to do a alcohol or booze review column. Feminist writers like Lynn Barber used to write. They'd be interviewing people like J.G. Ballard. This was actually really quite a progressive magazine. Nonetheless trying to set this tone for the gentleman of the era, would be, educated, but also fawn after beautiful young women. But now all you have to do is pick up a mobile phone, and within a couple of clicks you've got some of the most graphic
really
explicit,
hardcore stuff.
really hardcore stuff.
Yeah. You mentioned when you were living in Salford that Central Manchester was your playground. When you moved to Mossley, did you notice a shift in your workflow?
Yeah, I think maybe there was something of a slowing down when I moved out here. I left the tower block in a lot of ways because it was social housing. It was through a housing association.
Okay.
Back in 2012, I had a couple of successful shows with my gallery, Paul Stolper, in London and in Oslo.
Okay.
And I just sort of had this feeling that, oh, hang on a minute, I'm making work about social housing. And here I am now. I don't feel that I can stay in this place or that I have a right to stay and looking at moving. But it was also sort of coming at a time when, I suppose, I was getting a little bit older. I'd had my days of, being at uni, started at 28, kind of being out in Manchester every weekend, clubbing, like I say, my playground, it was where I was sort of playing, if you like. And then when I moved out here, I was maybe a little bit more settled within myself.
Yeah.
So there was definitely a slowing down. I didn't go out as much as I did. And like now, a nice walk along the canal on a sunny afternoon or go for a run with Saddleworth runners is like my kind of a rock and roll during the week.
Yeah.
And heading into Manchester on the train now is like a big night out.
Well, the Epic Vision podcast is about spotlighting creatives from Tameside in the Greater Manchester area. Do you feel like the creative energy in smaller communities like Mossley, Denton, surrounding areas, does it seem different to Manchester, central Manchester?
That's a really good question. And again, it's one that I don't feel massively well placed to answer because it's been a long time since I've been active on the art scene in Manchester. And now when I hear about galleries opening up, it's like it's a kind of a new generation, in control of all of that. But I think there is a difference in energy. In the centre of Manchester and Salford, there are a lot more spaces that get taken over, the smaller independent galleries getting set up.
Yeah.
You've obviously got the university centred there, Man Met, and then Salford.
Yeah.
There's more kind of artist collectives, but you've also got Stockport as well, which has got a really thriving art scene. Obviously, we're lucky here in Mossley to have Wood End Mill. And the amazing studios here and the community within the community of artists that are based here and regular events, so that opportunity to open up your studios. But I think it becomes more difficult in the smaller provincial areas outside of the city centre, in that sense that within the city centre there's kind of an appetite for it and a market for it, and people are interested. That's where people expect to see art. When there are gallery openings and things happening, people will go to them. Whereas I think, if something was to happen outside of that, like if a small independent gallery opened in Denton for contemporary art, people would have to travel to that. And would the local community of Denton be interested in, understand, or would they be consumers for that and have that interest to go to the art gallery, engage with the art? It sort of, I suppose, for me, raises more questions than answers in some ways.
That's a conversation that I think a lot of artists have been having, and the search for the spotlight or chasing the spotlight, going right into the city centre. I mean, a lot of artists are trying to get to London and get their foot in, whether it's music, whether it's art, they feel like that's where it's happening. And if it's Manchester, it's like central Manchester, that's where it's happening. So if you're in Denton or if you're in Mossley, you feel a bit overlooked because it's not the same. So you talked about being here in Mossley and here in Wood End Mill, to be specific, that there's a nice community of artists and all that. How important do you think that having that community is?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because for a lot of your life as an artist, it's a solitary
Very lonely
sort
road,
of,
yeah.
it's a solitary sort of path.
Yeah.
And obviously we're coming here, and as you know now, I've got that door shut.
Yeah.
It's a big corridor out there.
Yeah.
I think Suzanne and Alex are in most of the time because they're both based their day jobs here.
Okay.
But outside of those two, and often seeing Annie, who runs the mill, kicking about, I don't really see other artists and other people.
Yeah.
And it quite often tends to be that for a lot of people within studio spaces, that, as it has been for me for years, I'm too busy grafting and working away at jobs to earn my money, to pay for the studio space and pay my rent and pay everything else, that I don't often get chance and time to be down here. Nevertheless, in saying that, community is important, and whether that is a physical community around you or an online community through social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, sort of other channels. Yeah. It's actually a question that has come up for me recently. And again, I have more questions than I have answers on this. You know, trying to find audiences for your work. Yes. And there's always this kind of desire to, like you said, to go to Manchester, to go out, to like, oh, right, well, we must open up to worldwide markets or whatever. Yeah. But I think actually there's a lot to be said for finding your audience and your people locally and keeping your audience kind of small and organic and around you than kind of trying to push too much wider.
Because it can get a bit much. And you spoke about social media as well. You're very active on Instagram.
I am at the minute. This has probably come after like having about 6 months where I barely touched it, and I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it. Somebody once described it to me. They once said, "You've got to feed the beast," and that really stuck with me. That really, really stuck with me. And I was like, "Oh my God, that is absolutely it. You've got to feed the beast." These things are channels that you know need constant feeding to keep your algorithms going, that keep your work getting out there, keep you getting profile views, and it is an art in itself. Short Supply, who are based in Manchester, are an amazing collective who have fantastic resources on how to do that exact thing.
Okay.
And more recently, what I've been trying to do is be a little bit more raw and a little bit more vulnerable and post things that are maybe not polished and finished and try and share a little bit of my story and journey, which is something I haven't done before.
So more like documents and stuff rather than
rather than
putting a finished product out there.
As artists, you know, we want to be spending all our time making work. But like, what, 25% of our time is making work, 25% of our time is marketing, another 25% of the time is admin, doing your taxes, making sure you're keeping all your receipts and all that.
Exactly.
And the other 25% of the time is, I don't know, trying to have a life somewhere amongst all of it. Like,
you're wearing all these hats and keeping all these plates spinning.
And you're doing it quite often on your own. And I think that's where, you know, community really comes in. Getting experience, chatting to people like, well, you know, how did you build your website? What do you with? And where, you know, the collective Short Supply, where they kind of come in, they share a lot of this knowledge, who are absolutely fantastic. So knowing, even just having people like that you might not know personally, but you're aware of their resources and can link in with things that they are doing. The Tameside Creative Network meeting that Hannah's set up since coming into post is...
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Hannah is doing an amazing job.
She really is.
And it's really good.
I think that's actually something that can be said as well for kind of working outside of the city centre, is a lot of it then does come down to, in Manchester city centre, it's very organic. You've got a concentrated amount of people who are into art, students, creatives around the Northern Quarter, creative industry businesses. You've got that huge hub. When you then kind of move out, Denton, Droylsden, Hyde, sort of places, there isn't that kind of concentration of people with those similar interests. So a lot of it sometimes can come down to the council or the local authority borough. And obviously here we're talking specifically about Tameside. And Tameside Council historically has not been the most progressive when it's come to arts and culture. However, recently there's been a shift within the council, new people into posts like Hannah, who is having a huge impact in her role.
Yeah.
I think making really positive changes. Things are starting to move forward, and having the council on your side and change makers, policy makers at that kind of level will eventually, it might take a while, but it will have that trickle down effect and then have a huge impact on the arts at kind of more grassroots level.
I agree. You studied taxidermy in uni.
I did, yeah.
And so
unofficially.
Unofficially.
Yeah.
So how then did you transition into collage?
Very good question. So yeah, while I was at uni, my dissertation was all about museums and the evolution of Western history, and how artists like Mark Dion, for example, work with museums to tell alternative histories. I started in the second year a self-directed research residency at the Herbarium, which is kind of the botany department and plant collections of the Manchester Museum. And that then I was collecting and pressing. I always had a notebook with me, and I'd be collecting flowers and pressing plants, and was making sculptures with books with kind of dried flowers coming out of them. And then a song thrush flew into a window at uni and died. And Tommy, the caretaker, went and buried it. And someone was like, "Oh, Sarah will want that. Sarah will want that." So someone came and told me, and sure enough, I went and dug it up, put it in a box. Took it off to my French class, eventually got it home, put it in the freezer, and then found it was Phil Leggett, a Bolton-based taxidermist. I was like, will you taxidermy this bird, but can I come and can I watch it and can I document the process? And so then, I remember some very special days of me sitting at my desk in uni, taxidermy and stuff, and my friend Gary would sit at the end of the desk eating a butter pie or whatever, fascinated by the process. And then people would start bringing me dead things that their cats had caught or that they'd seen at the side of the road. And
so was that bird your first one then?
Yeah, that bird was my first one. So by the time it got to my degree show and the dissertation, everything fed into each other. And my whole degree show were taxidermy pieces. But quite a lot of them were bits and bobs of animals.
Okay.
Kind of put together to make either 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional kind of assemblages. So in some ways I was kind of collaging with the taxidermy stuff. And then of course left uni, things sort of changed. I always get asked what happened, how I very first made my first collage and how I very first took a naked woman and stuck her over the top of an image of a town block. And I can't for the life of me remember. I know I'd been in the archives at Salford, and I know I'd been gathering up and kind of, I'm a collector. I love collecting things, and when I get into something, it's almost like a special interest, and I get heavily into it. So I know I'd started collecting images. It might have been through the Empire Exchange in Manchester, that's at the bottom of Newton Street near Piccadilly. You kind of go down these stairs, and it's just this magical world of all sorts of things. And I probably got a magazine from there.
I think I've been there twice, and they've got a lot of clothes as well, and vinyls and whatever you can think of.
Whatever you can think of, they have in there, from kind of like memorabilia, and then at the back
they've got magazines,
kind of and adult stuff. And I remember when I first started going there, I'd kind of go in and be like, I'm looking for 60s, 70s vintage stuff. And he's like, right, okay, I'll go and have a look what we've got and I'll come out. I don't think, why? Like, I can go in, I'm a grown woman. Why won't you let me in? Why are you trying to protect me? And then I realised it wasn't me. It was the other customers that were using that space. That actually, I would have probably made them feel really uncomfortable. That actually looking at a woman in a magazine's one thing, but then being confronted by a woman in real life would be something totally different. Because working in a local history library, you get some very particular characters in there who you tend to get quite a few men, older men, who perhaps don't have the best social skills. They've got an intent interest that they're kind of like researching and getting into. And then the characters that I'd come across in like the Northern Quarter's backstreet magazine shops, who were not wanting to stereotype anybody into being a kind of, brown Mac wearing old man. But there were similarities in these two sort of worlds. I did often notice that my presence would make people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But then over time of going back, they got used to me, they got to understand me, I built up really great relationships with them, they know what I was looking for and would keep stuff back for me.
Yeah. You described your work as palimpsest.
Yeah.
What does that term mean to you?
Yeah, do you know, it's a word that I often look up and still keep going back to the meaning. But to me, it's just like two things coming together.
Right.
And quite often within my works, it is just two things. Yeah. They're not collages that involve multiple imagery. Yeah. It quite often is just kind of two things that come together. Three, if I put down a coloured background. And two kind of things that would never normally be associated as well.
Curators have looked at your work and assumed that they were digital works because of how meticulous you are and how precise you are with your cutting.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through your cutting process and what fascinates you so much about the craft of cutting?
Oh, do you know, I think it's something about tracing. When I was a kid, I was never very good at art and I'm not very good at drawing. I love tracing. I love tracing paper and tracing around things and then tracing it down and then doing my drawing that way. And collage in a way is kind of tracing. I'm just going round a line. Yeah. I then see myself more as kind of like a curator of the image, deciding where something goes down and positioning.
How do you do that? How do you decide what stays in and what to leave out?
Yeah, it usually starts with the archive image and I'll have that. Then I will just sit flipping through magazines. So it's a process of selection. It's an analogue process. I use a scalpel on a cutting mat. I once remember Paul Stolper very lovingly telling me I was in London. I'd gone to see him, I'd left the gallery and he rang me and he's like, "Where are you? What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm going over to Cork Street to see some exhibitions." He went, "Great." He said, "Go to Waddington Galleries and have a look at Peter Blake's cutting out while you're there." I kind of got this scolding of like, go on, Peter Blake's cutting out's amazing.
That's really interesting. So how did you and Paul meet?
I still don't know how he found my work, but I think I must have been exhibiting with somebody who sent their work to him. He must have looked through what they were doing, seen my work and gone, "Oh, I'm really interested in that."
That's
and he dropped me an email. I was kind of a bit like, "Is this real? Is this real? Is this?"
Yeah.
And I remember going through the process of, I arranged a meeting to go down and see him and take my portfolio. I went and met with my former tutor from Salford University, Paul Haywood, who was brilliant. I was kind of like, "Oh my God, Paul, what do I do?" And Paul was like, "Just be yourself." And it was amazing. So then getting down to see him, I remember having done this like portfolio and everything was wrapped in tissue paper and I'd put kind of a pair of cotton gloves in there to kind of, show that my work was valuable and important. Yeah. And Paul was just like, "Do I have to use these gloves?" I'm like, "No, you don't. You've absolutely fine." And I think from that very first instance, Paul's really down to earth. He made me feel incredibly at ease. I was just able to be myself. But yeah, we've worked with each other now for, going on 15 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah. It's amazing. Good. And I wouldn't imagine working with anybody else. There's been kind of ups and downs in that where I've kind of, dropped off the radar with work and mental health stuff and maybe not been producing, but he's stuck with me
that's
through everything.
That's really good that you've got that support. Would you say being an artist is hard in general?
It is. It's a balancing act. I mean, art tends to be something that just comes out of you naturally.
Yes.
So in that sense of being an artist, producing art, I don't think that is necessarily hard. However, the things that you come up against as an artist, self-doubt, self-criticism.
You've mentioned your work getting censored online.
Oh, yeah.
And how did that make you feel? Do you think it adds to the political statements your works make?
Yeah, I mean, more than anything, it only just happened this week. I had an image taken down and there's not even a boob on it and she's wearing knickers. It's not even like, it's just like, I find it really frustrating. You can't have an argument with an algorithm is something I've learned the hard way. But both Facebook and Instagram, the meta platforms, have these community standards that state no nudity is allowed except for photographs and paintings that depict nudity.
Yeah.
Artworks that depict nudity, or photographs of artwork that depict nudity, or images that are there for educational purposes and trying to raise awareness.
Yes.
So my work's artwork. It's trying to say something. It's got a message. It has kind of more about it than, yet Playboy managed to get away with posting up whatever they want on Instagram. And, really interesting kind of case studies of, there was a French school teacher who took Facebook to court for posting an image of Gustave Courbet's Origin of the World, which is just basically female genitalia. And every year I get a memory that pops up on my Facebook, and I post that painting every year because it's like, it's a painting.
Yeah.
It's just a painting. It's not real. It's not a real woman's body. It's a painting of. It's a simulation of. But yeah, it's really tough. So now, I had an Instagram account deleted. I'd come down here. I opened one of those drawers and found a collage. I'd like, oh wow, I've not seen that for ages. Posted it. And by the time I'd walked back towards the door, my account had gone. So now I make sure I always tag Paul Stolper, I tag myself in there. I always am explicit about it being a paper collage, it having a title, the year of media. If I censor something, if there is a visible nipple, I will run it through Photoshop and pixelate that nipple. I will be explicit about it being censored for Instagram. Hashtag censored for Instagram. Hashtag collage art, all of the like. Really try and back myself up.
Yeah.
And just the other day I had a piece taken down that said it, and I kind of put the appeal in to ask for a review, that it doesn't break the community standards, and it was put back online.
It must be frustrating for you to have to jump through all these hoops just to get your work seen.
Yeah, and I think also within that then there's kind of the sexist slant to it as well, that, if it was a half-naked man, a top-naked man, no problem. Nobody would bat an eyelid at that image. But because it's a woman in oh no, the female body, oh no, we can't have that proliferated online.
It's very interesting that this cuts across cultures as well.
Yeah.
Because I can take my shirts off and walk down the streets right now and...
Yeah, I'd be arrested.
Indecent exposure.
Yeah.
But...
I'd probably have things thrown at me from passing cars as well, but no one needs to see it.
But yeah, it's very interesting how the same thing done by these two genders spark different conversations and also get different reactions.
Yeah.
So it just goes back to how amazing your work is and how much thinking you force us to do as human beings. The tower blocks, you described them as filing cabinets.
Yeah.
That was such a wow moment for me when you said that, because now I look at tower blocks and I actually think that way, just like filing cabinets. You look at the windows and they look like, little drawers that you can open.
Just pull them out and look
and then
at people's
rummage
lives.
through their lives.
Yeah.
It's such a deep way of looking at life, because we are all living life in these tower blocks. We've been put on this earth and we've made these man-made structures that we live our whole life in.
Maybe, if one thing can be said, that's the role of an artist.
Yeah.
Is to break out of those cultural structures and put some circles in there. Yeah,
put some circles in there, exactly. Talking about that, what role do you think that artists play today or can play in speaking up about things like you speak about, like justice, like fairness, housing, and everything in between?
I think that ultimately is the role of an artist, is to be communicating, saying something.
To focus on those kind of topics.
Yeah, on something, the personal is political. Your art is personal, therefore it's political. It's saying something, it's commenting, otherwise it's not art.
So what about if an artist says, well, my art is not political, I don't like politics, I don't want to be involved in...
that's fine also, but maybe it's about something else within society. Or, you get people who make paintings, they're painters, they're not artists.
Yeah.
You can make beautiful landscapes. It's painting.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm probably going to get like really slaying that now. Bring it out me. Change my mind, make me think something different.
Yeah, if you think differently, let us know. But I think I agree with you. So let's just fast forward to the next generation of women, right? What do you hope they understand from looking at your work?
Wow. I hope they understand what it is I'm investigating, because I know that there are quite a lot of women who don't like my work.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Wow.
Yeah, there are quite a lot of women who don't like my work. They think that I'm just perpetuating the kind of cycle of exploitation. I hope that in generations to come, women who see my work will understand the message, understand a lot of the women in my images are there standing in for me. That, these are my vulnerabilities within the landscape that I inhabit, and they represent my story as a white woman inhabiting these spaces.
Right.
So yeah, I just hope that message still comes through with my work.
Beautiful. I'm very confident that it will.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here, and thanks for coming to chat to me.
Thank you for your time, and your work is really inspiring and amazing. Keep doing what you're doing, and you are an inspiration to many people.
Thanks.